our economic ambitions. It is the only way that we give expression to our own aspirations for a more connected Africa. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, it is the only way that we ensure that Africans have pathways to economic opportunities that reflect their own ambitions for prosperity. And so it is going to be very tight over the next 2 days. We are going to ask you to keep time. We are going to ask you to move around, and we are going to ask you to participate. Now, a couple of announcements in terms of how the day is going to work. Up on your screen very shortly you're going to see 3 QR codes. This conversation and conference over the next 3 days is going to be happening primarily across 3 different venues. This is our plenary venue. And so every time that you're required to come into plenary, please make sure that you come into this venue. The other thing that I'd like to bring to your attention, of course, is that we want to amplify the conversation onto social media. And so the hashtag that we're using is ATF2024. There are going to be parallel sessions in other parts of the building, but Marie, Angel, and myself will ensure that you have all the requisite information that is required in terms of where to go. So, my sister, are we good to start? Yep. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, to invite Vernau, our very first speaker, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Vice President for the Private Sector, Infrastructure and Industrialization Complex here at the African Development Bank. Won't you please welcome with a warm round of applause, Mr. Solomon Kano. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency Amadou Kone, Minister of Transport, Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, our host, Your Excellencies, the ministers from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the republics of Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Nigeria, Namibia, Gabon, Tanzania, Mozambique, Tunisia, Ethiopia, Burundi, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. What a very impressive showing. Heads of regional economic communities, heads of development finance institutions and their representatives, members of the diplomatic corps and representatives of international institutions, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome once again to the African Development Bank Transport Forum. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all this morning to the second edition of the AfDB Transport Forum 2024. Themed Africa on the Move, Accelerating Sustainable Transport and Logistics Connectivity. This builds on the successful first AfDB Transport Forum, which brought together various practitioners and stakeholders who delved into and discussed the key issues and challenges facing the transportation sector on the African continent. We believe that the AfDB is centrally placed to generate knowledge products, foster knowledge dissemination, and catalyze innovation by providing the necessary linkages and synergies needed to unleash the development impact of transport in Africa. As you're aware, the AfDB is a major contributor to infrastructure development and financing of transformational, national, and cross-border projects on the continent. And we've done more than $44 billion invested in the past decade and also positioned ourselves as the resolute partner in efforts and initiatives aimed at strengthening planning, policy, and implementation of transport projects in Africa. It has over the years been our role to crowd in financing and facilitate development of large-scale critical regional programs in transport. And this is demonstrated in strategic initiatives such as the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, which we all call PIDA. And we've been working on this with the African Union, AfDA NEPAD, and the UN Economic Community for Africa. We've also been looking at regional corridors and trans-African highway projects across all African regions with the regional economic communities. All these are aiming to foster regional cooperation and integration in support of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the Africa 2063 agenda, the UN SDGs, and the AfDB's newly launched 10-year strategy with what we call our high five strategic priorities remaining relevant over the next decade as well. So furthermore, the AfDB is cautious of the imperatives of climate change and its effects on the transport sector. Therefore, we have embraced and are scaling up resilient and green infrastructure with climate finance and private sector by promoting climate resilient infrastructure across the continent. You all probably know the strong commitment of Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the AfDB Group, to climate change solutions for Africa, especially as it relates to adaptation and the launching of a series of initiatives, including, first, the Climate Change Action Plan 2021 to 2026, with an ambitious target of $25 billion for adaptation finance by 2025, to scale up and accelerate climate change adaptation across Africa. Second, we have the Climate Action Window set up by the bank to fill the significant climate finance gap to be directed towards adaptation, 75%, mitigation, 15%, and technical assistance, 10%, by supporting countries to implement their nationally determined contributions and long-term strategies under the Paris Net Zero objectives. Thirdly, the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, which was launched at COP17 in Glasgow, which has now mobilized fundraising pledges of about $275 million towards project development and project preparation for from Africa-focused MDBs, G7 countries, and philanthropists or foundations. The objective is to catalyze about $10 billion of total investments from private sector into green infrastructure in Africa. For all of you in the transport business, transport infrastructure, whether you're looking at PPP projects or you're looking at private concessions, we all know that the big challenge in Africa is not the need, it's really the dearth of bankable transactions. So this is one of our deliberate efforts in actually unlocking really the market for project development in infrastructure, specifically green infrastructure. The target is to raise up to 500 million. We've done about 275 million to date. This is just an example of one of the key initiatives we're looking to implement, not just by ourselves, but with partners such as Africa 50, the African Union Commission, outer NEPAD, and several others. So in spite of all these efforts, Africa's gap in infrastructure remains massive. So that's why the bank, in collaboration with other regional development banks, has established the Africa Investment Forum, now in its 6th edition, as an investment marketplace to accelerate the reduction of the continent's investment deficits through mobilization of private investment. With the remarkable outcome of the 2023 edition, the market days have attracted significant serious investment interest since the forum's 2018 debut. I hereby take this opportunity to invite you to the 2024 AIF, taking place on the 4th to 6th December in Rabat, Morocco, and my colleague, who's the special envoy to President Adesina on the AIF, Yassine Fall, is here as well and would be available to actually explain things to you. So, honorable ministers, your excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the AfDB views the transport sector as crucial for promoting inclusive growth and prosperity in collaboration with its regional member countries. It is also the anchor to successfully industrializing Africa and driving intra-Africa trade under the auspices of the AfCFTA. So resolving transport and logistics in Africa is key for our respective and aggregated economies to be competitive. So we're not looking at infrastructure really as an end-all. We're looking at infrastructure as an enabler to making sure we have competitive economies, we create jobs, and also we create quality jobs. And in particular, when we even look at transportation corridors going forward, the idea is not to just support the old model of industrialization, which was to export commodity products to overseas locations, transform them, and then re-import. What we want to do is we want to see greater value addition, within Africa. We want to see greater intra-Africa trade. This is part of the reason we're putting these logistics corridors together. Border posts are a key part of making these transportation corridors efficient. It's good to see more of scanning systems here. These are the sorts of, transportation corridor efficiency investments that we are going to look to pursue going forward. So today's Transportation Forum 2024 will provide the foundation for unlocking the impediments in the sector and unleashing the transformative power that the transport sector has to catalyze economic and social development and regional integration of our continent. The forum would undoubtedly advance sector dialogue between public and private sector for more efficient and sustainable transport sector critical for Africa's growth and prosperity. We do all of this with partners, so it's good to see colleagues from the World Bank. It's good to see colleagues from DBSA, from the AfriExim and others, because this is all really partnership-based. We don't have all the solutions, and we definitely don't have all the capital, so we need to really work together. So once again, on behalf of the African Development Bank, I wish to thank you for kindly honoring the invitation to be here today. The AfDB stands ready to listen, engage, discuss, and partner with you to support the socio-economic development of Africa through an efficient and sustainable transport sector. I wish you very fruitful deliberations over the next 3 days. Thank you.
And in those opening remarks, of course, highlighting the transformational impact that transport can have in terms of transforming our economies, allowing us to realize the value addition that we want to see in African value chains, allowing us to realize the regional integration ambitions that we see through mechanisms like the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, but allowing that to come to life, and of course allowing for the greater aspiration of industrialization. Before I call on my next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, to bring to your attention that we do have simultaneous interpretation. English is on channel 1. And French is on channel 2. And if you don't have a set, please make your way to the back. The technical team will assist you. And if your set is giving you any problems, they're also on standby to assist you. For those who are asking about the Wi-Fi is open. It is Accor. So if you go into the Wi-Fi, it's the one spelled ACCOR, and it is open and does not require any passwords. The second opening address that we're going to have this morning is going to come from the head of the program team, this at the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the stage Mr. Frederick Whitman, please. Thank you very much.
I'm delivering this address on behalf of the CEO of the MCDF, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. Your Excellency, Minister Kone, Senior Vice President Chabalala, Vice President Quainer, distinguished Excellencies, distinguished guests and colleagues. On behalf of CEO Wong, I would like to welcome all speakers and participants to the second African Development Bank Forum on Accelerating Sustainable Transport and Logistics Connectivity. I would like to thank the African Development Bank and its partners for the organization of this forum, for which the MCDF, that stands for Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance, is a sponsor. The MCDF is a multilateral financial mechanism designed to meet the needs of developing countries for high-quality infrastructure, connectivity infrastructure investments. The MCDF has a financing facility of about $180 million that provides grants to accredited IFI, international financing institution implementing partners, to fund investment project preparation and capacity building programs. This support includes technical feasibility studies, environmental and social assessments, and project readiness support in general. The MCDF can support the preparation of both public and private sector projects, including public-private partnership transaction advisory. Complementing the grants extended by the finance facility, the MCDF collaboration platform leverages expertise from 12 major IFIs who are partnering with us. We're hosted in Beijing by the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The platform also supports government and partner financiers in their adoption of international standards for quality infrastructure in project design and implementation. In the past 3 years that we've been operating, so we're relatively new, the AfDB has become a key implementing partner of the MCDF, both in terms of the volume of grants approved, to date over 15 million, soon to be double that, but also in terms of its strategic relevance as a key player on the continent. We have approved support for ambitious investment project preparation in Africa, also for large capacity building programs, and for knowledge and information sharing events, such as the forum today. Connectivity will be one of the key topics for the next 2 days. We firmly believe that connectivity infrastructure is essential to promote growth and poverty reduction. The establishment of regional corridors through the development of aviation, railway, roads, and ports will develop an integrated network of continental and regional intermodal infrastructure across Africa. An infrastructure that is affordable and demonstrates resilience and adaptation. The establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area was a milestone accomplishment that will further unlock the potential of the continent. MCDF has been established to support these ambitions by seeking to build strong partnerships among countries, IFIs, development finance institutions, emerging market financiers, and the private sector through private investors. We welcome the participation of all of these institutions today. I very much look forward to participating in the forthcoming panel parallel sessions and follow-up conversations in what promises to be a very rich forum, including the associated Knowledge Day and training seminars. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci infiniment, Monsieur Whitman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitman, for having shared the vision of CAU and of MCDF on this key subject, that is the connectivity of transport infrastructure on the African continent. Right now, it's my honor to be introducing to you a key figure of infrastructure development in Côte d'Ivoire, whose visionary action has sustainably impacted this strategic sector. Some of you who've been living in Côte d'Ivoire for some years now, well, you have the capacity and you've been able to notice over the years that this transport sector is being transformed, and the Minister of Transport, Mr. Amadou Komedi, represented by Mr. Abdoulaye Aliagui, will tell us a bit more about that. I would like you to welcome him warmly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers in charge of transport infrastructure of the member countries of the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished representatives of international and regional institutions, distinguished directors general, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, the executive directors of the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellencies, Vice Presidents of the African Development Bank Group, ladies and gentlemen, members of the senior management, dear development partners, dear participants to this forum, ladies and gentlemen of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The Minister of Transport of Côte d'Ivoire, Mr. Amadou Kone, would have liked to be here with us this morning, were it not for some last-minute changes in his timetable. He therefore has asked me, as his Assistant Director of Cabinet, to express his apologies to the distinguished personalities and all those that are present at the ceremony. On his behalf, therefore, I am here on this rostrum to deliver his message to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with excitement that I am taking the floor this morning at the opening of the second edition of the African Development Bank Transport Forum called ATF 2024. Allow me to extend the warmest greetings and thanks of His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, to the African Development Bank for its constant financial support to Côte d'Ivoire in its implementation of its important infrastructure and transport projects. I would also like to associate the thanks of His Excellency Mr. Robert Bogre Mambe, Prime Minister and Head of Government. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of the ATF 24, entitled Africa on the Move, Accelerating the Connectivity of Sustainable Transport and Logistics, is aligned with the topical issues of connectivity in various sectors of activity. As such, the challenges facing African countries, and particularly our country, Côte d'Ivoire, in view of the changes underway in the transport and logistics sector, require adequate responses. This ATF 2024 forum will bring together political decision makers, industrialists, and experts in order to advance reforms in the transport sector and to provide innovative solutions. It will specifically address important topics such as promoting greater private sector participation, integrated and smart infrastructure solutions, and new financing mechanisms. Discussions will also focus on road safety, multimodality, and the challenges of urban mobility. Thus, during its proceedings, you will reflect on the actions to be undertaken to accelerate connectivity of transport and sustainable logistics. Ladies and gentlemen, in Côte d'Ivoire, the transport sector plays a key role in the economic and social development of the country, as testified by its contribution to the GDP, which is between 7 and 10%. The Ivorian government, under its National Development Plan 2021-2025, intends to implement priority actions with a view to removing the major cross-cutting constraints, namely the lack of access to financing, 2, the transport and logistics gaps, 3, digital connectivity gaps, and the skills gaps. Therefore, the actions of the Ivorian government are implemented to make it possible for the members of the population to access sustainable and quality transport services and to make them competitive by embracing the digital era. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, the conclusions of the proceedings of the forum are certainly awaited by the African Development Bank, but also by African states, including Côte d'Ivoire, which intends to take them into account in making the necessary adjustments to its transport and logistics policy, which are being implemented. While wishing you total success in your work, I declare open the second edition of the African Development Bank Forum on Transport, ATF 2024. On behalf of the Minister of Transport, a speech signed by the Minister of Transport of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, Mr. Amadou Kone,